He's Tarzan. I love him. Give it up for Joe Rogan, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to have you here,
Good to see you, man.
Thank you so much.
This is an interesting thing you've done for people that don't see the audience. There's like a small, what is there, 20 people here?
Yeah,
Something like
but
that?
it feels like 200.
It works. This
Yeah.
little room works. It works.
You know, this is a famous old room downstairs in the Comedy Store. You started here in about 2000, what? I mean, about 1986?
No, I started here in 94.
Oh, in 94.
Yeah, that's when I moved here.
A lot of us started as doormen here at the Comedy Store.
Yeah, I
right?
got lucky, man. I was already working comic, but I had to be an unpaid regular for a while. Like she saw me, and she made me a non-paid regular, and so I think I had to do that for like 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
So 5 or 6 months, I was basically here every single night.
Right.
And the last person who was on the lineup, I would go on after them.
Right.
And so I just waited. I
That's
waited
great
every
combat
night.
training, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, man. And plus, I didn't know anybody out here. I had just moved here from New York, and I didn't have any friends.
Yeah.
And so it was easier to just be here every single night. You know.
But you developed in Boston, though, right?
Well, I started in Boston, and then I moved to New York for a few years, and then I went from New York to here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think most of it was really from Boston. You know, that's how I developed.
But when you got to Los Angeles, you were pretty well set with a manager, got you a Disney deal right away, pretty much when you got to town, right?
Yeah, I already had one. Yeah, that's why I came here.
Yeah.
I came here to do a TV show that wound up getting canceled. It was called Hardball. It was a baseball show.
That was a good show, though. It was a good idea.
It could have been good. Could have been good, but it wasn't.
It wasn't?
No. No. It's a crazy story. It was a good introduction to Hollywood.
What'd you learn?
Well, they have these two guys that were really brilliant writers.
This is over at Fox, right?
Yeah, Jeff Martin and Kevin Curran. And they wrote for, I think they wrote for Married with Children and The Simpsons. Those are shows they had written for. I hope I'm right about that.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Married with Children. And, well, either way, they were brilliant writers. And they wrote this really funny, quirky baseball sitcom thing. But then all these other people got involved and wanted them to do things their way, and they wanted to add people, and people start monkeying with scripts,
Yeah.
and they fall apart. And then they took control away from those two writers, and then they gave it back to them at the end, but it was too late. It was a disaster. So it was an interesting experience to be here, basically just doing stand-up as much as I could, doing stand-up basically whenever I could get up, hopefully every night, just hang out here. And then go to this weird set every day where everybody knows they're on a sinking ship.
Yeah.
And I was like, everybody knew the sitcom was not going to make it. Like, this thing's terrible.
It made no sense for Fox to do that. They had 2 hits at the time, Married with Children and The Simpsons. You think they would give the writers some latitude?
Yeah, man, I don't understand it. I'm not smart enough to run a business like that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't get how they get any shows on the air. I don't get it.
Really?
I can barely do what I do. The idea of like managing a network and deciding like what shows are gonna hit and why and how you make them better, like fuck, it's nonsense. No one knows what it is, and you just gotta get lucky. If you have talented people who write good stuff, then it's a good show. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. And so fucking good people make shitty shows.
Right.
It costs too much money to let them put it together and figure it out on the air, so they dive in out of desperation and they wind up fucking it up even worse. It's chaos.
Well, then, but you got lucky then and segued to a really good experience with news radio.
Yeah, I got real lucky. I had a deal with NBC when my Fox thing went under. And then they said, instead of doing your own show, would you like to audition for this other show?
Right.
And I actually got the chance to watch the pilot. And it was really good. It was really funny.
You got to work with Phil Hartman and Andy Dick. Tell us about them.
It sounds like we're doing an interview, man.
We want some Phil Hartman and Andy
If I
Dick
didn't
stories.
know
They
any
were great.
better, well, they were great folks. You know, it was very fortunate to be with people so talented, because it was as a person who had almost no acting.
Yeah.
I had a few episodes of that Fox show that went under, but I never really acted.
Yeah.
So like for all of a sudden, I'm doing it for like a year and a half, and I'm working with Phil Hartman. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it didn't even make any sense. I'd see him every day, and I'd be like, all right. Like, I'm working with Phil Hartman? What the fuck is this?
He
Like,
was
it
a
didn't
genius.
make any sense to me that I was there.
Yeah.
You know?
And Andy Dick?
He's a maniac. You know that. Has he tried to lick you? Has he ever licked you?
No. I just tried a 12-step and leave it at that.
That's good. Have you tried? Tried to bring him in?
Oh, yes.
Do you guys have a 12-step Wonder Woman
He's
magic
Moby
lasso?
Dick. He's the one that gets away. All the fishermen. Everybody in there
Yeah, I
talks
could have
about
told you that one. I
Andy
could have
Dick
told you
story.
that one. He's a good he means well though.
Oh yeah, he's funny
a
guy too.
Really fucking talented guy. I did so many scenes with Andy where I couldn't stop laughing. Like we had to redo the scene because I'd crack.
Yeah.
Because he would get in your face,
Yeah.
and he would get in your face and say something that was so preposterous, and you'd be like, "Fuck, I can't hold it in." And start laughing, and then the crew's laughing, and camera people are laughing. It would happen a lot with Andy. He's a really funny guy, but like a lot of really funny guys, he's a fucking maniac. You know, and that's what makes him great, and that's probably what does him in occasionally too. But I always wish the best for him.
Around this time, you got involved with mixed martial arts on TV and that. How did that come about?
Well, I had become a fan of the UFC, and my manager just so happens to have been friends with the guy who was the executive producer of the UFC. And they were having a conversation, and he was like, "Joe loves it. Like, he talks about it all the time. Like, he's always like talking about big fights that are coming up. He's like, he goes, I'd like to put you guys on the phone." And so he goes, "Listen, we're trying to hire a new guy to interview people after the fights." And so I was like, "Dude, I'm in. Let's do it."
Yeah.
And my manager was like, "Wait, what the fuck? What the fuck are you doing?" You know, he's like, "You got to go interview people after cage fights."
Yeah.
You ready to do this? Okay. They thought it was ridiculous. And when I would tell people on the news radio set, they would honestly, Dana White and I have talked about this. They treated you like you were doing porn or something.
Yeah.
Like you were a porn director.
Yeah.
They're like you're
Boogie fights.
Yeah, like you're working for cage fights.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's martial arts. It's like they're trying to figure out what works. They didn't get it. To me, it's like, as a lifelong martial artist, this is something that we had always wanted to know. There was always like the big question. See, before something like the UFC came around, the big question was what was best. And the wrestlers thought that wrestling was best, and karate guys thought they could fuck you up with one punch.
Yeah.
And everybody had their own idea of what would work in a real fight, because the reality was very few people fought interdisciplinary. So like if you were a Taekwondo fighter like I did Taekwondo, you would do Taekwondo against other people that do Taekwondo only.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't really necessarily fight a Muay Thai guy or a wrestler or a Jiu-Jitsu guy. It never really would come up unless you were in some crazy street altercation. Those are hard to document.
Right.
So it's hard to figure out. It's hard to figure out what really works. Like for me, it's like it's not. It's certainly violent, but it's not violence that's interesting to me. To me, it's like there's a problem-solving thing going on.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting to me. Like people are trying to figure out each other's issues. They're trying to figure out how to hit you and not get hit, how to fuck you up and not get fucked up, how to figure out how to get to you, how to break up your rhythm, make you react in a funny way. And what's better? Is it better to do it standing up, or is it better to just take people down and smash them on the ground?
Yeah.
Is it better to choke them quick? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. They had to try, and they had to figure this out. And so to me, I knew that other people thought it was disgusting. I knew a lot of people, they thought it was like human cockfighting. But to me, it was like, you guys are missing this. This is the big figure out. Like all sports, all of them are basically, you're trying to beat people.
Kill or be killed.
You're trying to beat them.
Yeah.
You're playing a game of war. You're trying to get your ball into a hoop. But the most fucked up one of all is actual violence. It's like you make a sport out of actual violence. Like not pretend violence.
Right.
Not like, like we're wearing helmets and no. No, actual violence is the sport. It's not like it doesn't get you kicked out. It gets you rewarded. Like in most sports, violence gets you in trouble. But in this sport, they're like, fuck it. Just all violence.
Well,
the whole sport's violence.
Is there an unspoken bond between you and the person you're fighting that, well, I'm not going to kill you and you're not going to kill me?
There's no thought like that, I don't think, for the most part.
How can they possibly compare that to cockfighting?
Well, no, it's not that. You can't think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want them to get hurt, for
Right,
sure.
okay.
You don't want them to get hurt, but you can't think about it. You have to think about just doing it, because it's so hard to do. Like, to compete where you're throwing bones at each other. It's like the best expression I've ever heard, the way to describe it. You're essentially hurling your bones at each other.
Wow.
I mean, that's what you're doing. So to do that, like, you can't be fucking around. You can't think about other shit while you're doing that. You have to just do that. You have to be
Right.
in that moment, or you get cracked.
And so it became your job to convey this to TV viewers, to an
Yes.
expanding market of viewers. And you got really good at describing it because you were like the top personality in the business, weren't you?
Well, I got lucky too. I sucked in the beginning, but nobody saw. Nobody was watching. So I learned how to do commentary on the fly. Like no one did. I didn't even know what the fuck a color commentator was. I didn't know there was two different guys. And one guy had one job, the play-by-play guy, and the other guy is a color guy. Like it didn't make any sense. I didn't even know how it worked. I had no experience.
The play-by-play guy says, it's a left hook, it's a right hook. You say, oh, he got it on that one.
Sort of, but in martial arts it's different because the play-by-play guy, like say if it was John Anik, who is the UFC play-by-play guy, and he was with a guy like Dominic Cruz. Like Dominic Cruz would have to explain what's happening. Like he's an expert as much as he's a commentator. Like we need him for technical expertise. So you'd always go to Daniel Cormier if you want to know about wrestling. Like, why is he doing this so effectively? What does this guy have to do to stop it? Like you go to this Olympian and he's going to set everything straight. Like so the play-by-play guy, usually in other sports, I guess they would be calling the action and then the other color guy would be sort of flavoring it. But in MMA, the color guy oftentimes is also calling the action. Because it's when shit goes to the ground. In specific, like things are like a mad scramble of limbs. And you got to be able to sort that out for someone's mom. Like someone's mom's at home going, what are they doing? And you got to go, this guy's trying to isolate that arm and he's got to keep his right knee on his chest. And he's got to hold his position. If he loses his position, he's fucked. You know, and that's the fun of it. It's the fun of it is like relaying it to people.
Well, parenthetically, from your experience as a Taekwondo master, I mean, that gave you a certain amount of confidence and spirituality. I would guess both. That had to help you in your stand-up comedy.
I think undue confidence for sure, because my stand-up was fucking terrible when I went from like being.
But you had great stage presence. Whether your material.
I'd done some teaching. I had taught martial arts, so I was used to talking in front of large groups of people. So that helped. It helped a lot. Yeah, but I was still fucking terrified. I had taught a regular class. I had a gym in Revere, Massachusetts that I was teaching a regular class at, like almost daily. And then I forget how many days a week, but I taught a class at Boston University too. It was like 1 or 2 days a week. So I taught that too.
Well, for yourself as a competitor, how does getting into one of those organized fights compare with, say, performing late night at the Comedy Store in your early days?
They're both scary in a different way. You know, but comedy's not less scary.
Right.
You know, the first time I ever got on stage, I almost chickened out. I was fucking terrified.
Taekwondo, she almost chickened out. That's amazing.
Yeah, dude, I was terrified, like legit scared. Yeah. I was so scared. I was on a list, right? But there was like Jonathan Katz was the host, and there was a certain number of people on the list, and it was like there was a question of whether or not I could get up. Like maybe they would have room for me, maybe they wouldn't, and it turned out they did. So Jonathan Katz is coming up to me like 15, 20 minutes in the show to let me know whether or not I'm going to be able to get up, and I am praying he's going to tell me I can't. I'm praying. I'm just like, I fucking, oh my God, I'm so nervous. And then I just figured out how to just do it.
Do you remember the first laugh you got?
It wasn't the first night. Not a legit one. Not legit laughter. Yeah, I mean, I had some sympathy laughter, maybe a couple of chuckles. It's just terrible. You know, it's like what you have to, it seems so easy. Like, I don't have to tell you this. You're a seasoned stand-up performer. It seems so easy when you're watching a guy on stage like yourself. You seem so relaxed. It seems like you're just talking. But there's this whole thing that's going on where you're structuring the sentence in the way that's going to have the most impact and sneaking up on you with punchlines and finding a way to address a subject that like gets it into the most people's brains but still gets your point and doesn't water it down. And
Johnny Carson called that our propensity to need to control. And our ability to do that is something we hone because comics love control.
There's definitely something to that too, but it's also there's a thing going on. You're trying to sort it out, right? You're trying to hit that nerve in people that makes them go bah. Yeah. Like this is a weird thing, right? Yeah. You're trying to do it with concepts and ideas, and you're trying to write it the right way. and you try it and it sucks, and you go back and try it again and it's better, and you're doing this thing, you're creating this weird thing, but the ultimate goal of this thing is to make people feel good. So the weird part of your job is that it's your job to figure out a way to say the things that make the people feel good, that make them laugh. So you have to like figure out, well, what's the frequency? What am I searching for? What subjects am I searching for?
Then they
What's
have to
my
feel
point of view?
they trust you that you want them to feel good too.
It has to be something that you really want to talk about too. Yeah, there has to be so many things, and they definitely have to trust you that you want them to feel good.
Yeah.
And you know, and you have to trust them too. Like you have to. It's a weird, like live performance is some weird sort of connection with human beings. It's
Well,
very.
I noticed you working on new material a couple of weekends ago in the main room, and you do trust the audience because you weren't going up there with perfectly structured written bits. You were riffing on ideas with them and trusting them to go there with you.
Yeah, with good. I mean, this place has the best crowds.
I mean, you have 10 televised specials, and you're working it out on stage in front of everyone. You're trusting them to follow you.
Well, you kind of, that's the only way to do it. I've been talking about this with friends that are musicians. It's hilarious because I'm like, you guys could do a whole album and no one could know about it. Like a comic has to prepare everything with the audience.
Yeah.
Like you don't do it on your own. Like you get the idea of what's funny on your own, and you get kind of some punchlines and some taglines, and you can get a lot of stuff out of your own, but you don't know how it works until you do it in front of people. There seems to be no other way, at least as far as I see with like top flight comics. They all seem to do it in a real similar way, where they do some writing, but really it comes to life in front of the people, and it changes in front of the people.
Well, I read up that one of your idols was Richard Pryor. And when I was watching you a couple of weeks ago, and I saw you working this stuff up, I think Louis C.K. works the same way. It reminded me of how Richard used to get up here at the Comedy Store, and the room would be packed in the original room. They're all here to see Richard. It's a special 10 o'clock show. Letterman, Marsha Warfield, and then Richard. And the place is just packed. And he will stand up. He would stand up in the original room, and he would refuse to do anything from his previous albums. He would get up there and just force himself to talk about what he did that day and slowly build and build and build. And in about 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, he would have pretty much that album put together because he trusted that audience so much. And you were doing that.
You were telling me once that he would go up there with like new stuff on Tuesday, it would bomb. On Wednesday, it would do better. On Thursday, it would be killing. By the time Friday and Saturday came along, he was literally ready to film a special with it.
Exactly.
And you were telling us that the other night.
He would that's how he would work with the premise and tag it and tag it and tag it and trust the audience. And that's what you were doing. And that's how guys like you and Louis C.K., I think, write such tremendous amounts of material. And I applaud you for that because you trust the audience.
I think Louis writes a lot because he's just very prolific. Like he just writes. You know, whether he's writing his television show or writing specials, he writes a new special like every 2 years.
Well, his feels a little more written than yours feels verbal.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very verbal, and that's what Richard did. Yeah.
Well, thank you. He's at all the people that I think are there's a giant chain of like who's like super important in comedy.
Yeah.
But for me, Richard was one of the big ones because my parents took me to see Live on the Sunset Strip when I was a teenager. And it was the first time I'd ever seen that kind of stand-up. I'd never seen anything like that before. Like maybe I'd seen, like I'd been up when I shouldn't be, and I was watching like some comic on the Carson show.
Yeah.
Maybe I saw that,
Yeah.
but at that age. But I remember I saw Richard Pryor live in the Sunset Strip in the movie theater. My parents are hippies. They're crazy.
Yeah.
They took me to see this fucking movie that I probably was not prepared for. And it was so funny that I was stunned. And I remember the moment like hitting me. Like, how is this guy doing this by just talking? Because I remember thinking of all the funny comedy movies like Animal House and all these great movies that made me laugh. They never made me laugh like this guy's doing by just talking. And I remember being a little kid, like looking around the seats behind me. And all these people just falling out of their chairs. There was just all this movement. I was like, this is insane. This guy can do this by just talking.
But he was tremendous. And another thing he has in common with you, he was extremely emotionally honest with the audience. Okay, I mean, if in AA terms, he was up there doing a fourth and fifth step, telling the absolute truth about his resentments, his fears, and his secrets to that audience. And when he revealed that to the audience, that just welded them together.
Yeah, well, he definitely brought a lot of things to comedy that didn't exist before. There was a casual honesty that he had.
Yeah, like for instance, Robert Klein of his era was brilliant. George Carlin was extremely clever. But Pryor is the one you love because he was so emotionally honest with you.
Well, also, his comedy was so smooth. It was so raw, but so smooth. He had some funny shit, man.
And a great storyteller.
You could still go back and listen to Pryor today, and it holds up. It was so good. His tempo, the way he carried himself on stage. Fire is inspirational. When he's talking about catching fire, and he's walking down, and you're dying, man. He could do that with anything, man. He's. I mean, if there's a king of the hill, he's probably it. You know, it's like, is it him? Is it Lenny Bruce? Like, Lenny Bruce was the first one. He was really the first real pioneer. Obviously, I wasn't alive when he was around,
Right.
but as far as what everybody says.
Did you read, Ladies and Gentlemen, Lenny Bruce?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
For our,
I read some of it.
For
I
our
didn't read the whole
young
thing.
viewers interested in comedy, I always recommend two primers. One of them is called The Last Laugh, 1975. Tremendous book on stand-up comedy between 1948 and 75. Great book. And most importantly, Ladies and Gentlemen, Lenny Bruce.
It's a great book.
By Albert Goldman. It not only told his story, it told how to become a stand-up comic.
Yeah, it did, but it also talked a lot about heroin, too, right?
Yeah.
You don't need
The
that
man liked to
all that
relax,
much.
okay?
Didn't that detail like the putting aluminum foil over the windows and
Yeah.
staying shooting heroin for days?
And his girlfriend, Lotus
Yeah.
Weinstock, becomes a great comedian here.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Well, he was the first guy doing that, right? He was the first guy. This was this generation of people that were starting to rethink society, and he was like really one of the very first big public voices to just rethink society, rethink communication, rethink culture. and do it through
He would do
humor.
something that Paul Mooney would do later on with movies. What Lenny Bruce did in the era of 3 television networks in the 1950s, you either saw Jack Parr or Johnny Carson late night,
Right.
and the other 2 stations showed late night movies. And so what Lenny Bruce would do is he would take an entire movie, like a Jimmy Cagney prison movie, and do an entire 20-minute bit on that movie, having everybody convulsive laughing, and he would inject his social commentary inside that little mini play he was presenting. And Mooney did that with movies throughout the 70s.
He has a joke that many people have accidentally rewritten. Because I know one guy that did it that's absolutely not a thief, but he just didn't know that Lenny had done it. But that's how well it holds up. And it was like, homosexuality's illegal, dig? So what do? They put you in jail with a bunch of guys who want to have sex with you. I mean, that is from like 1960 something.
Yeah.
That shit holds up nice.
Well,
There's probably an open micer right now going, fuck! Fuck! I thought I wrote that. Because it's one of those jokes. It's so good, it just gets rewritten accidentally.
Well, there were a lot of great joke thieves here before you arrived.
It's unfortunate.
And, Robin Williams and Ollie Joe Prater, they were masters at the craft. But
so hard to hear.
But you would confront Carlos Mencia about that. And what Brett, our director, of course, great comedian, was showing me the tape of you and Mencia here at the Comedy Store last night. And it struck me that was the joke. I mean, he took a lot of things, Carlos did. But that joke about how are you going to build a 2,000-mile-long wall without Mexicans?
Right.
I mean, a 5th grader could have written that joke. Bill Maher had already done it on the air. That's probably where Mencia got it. And then maybe Ari Shafir, of course he wrote it originally, but it was an easy joke originally to write.
Well, here's the thing, though. When Ari wrote it, it was a fake premise. They weren't really considering building a wall.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's Ari's joke.
Ah.
And when you see Mencia hold his hand up explaining, that's exactly how Ari did it. He stole the mannerisms.
God.
He stole everything. Because Ari's whole thing was, who do you think's going to build the wall?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's Ari's timing. And like, he was literally doing Ari's hand movement. I mean, when he's stolen Lewis Black's thing, he's done this thing with his fingers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a sickness.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
And
And
this is
you
back
get
in-
away with it. If you get away with it, it's bad for you too.
Exactly.
It's bad for everybody. Like any guy who can kill from stealing can kill by writing. They can do it.
It's self-robbery to steal.
It's self-robbery, for
Yeah,
sure.
it
It
is.
really is.
It
Stealing jokes is probably, like, to do that and not be able to write them has got to be the curse of curses. Because you go on stage with somebody else's bit, and as you do it, everybody's laughing, but you know you're a fraud. Like, that's got to be the curse of curses. And then, if you get called out, now you have to write all your own stuff, but you never learned how to do that before
Yeah.
because you were always stealing.
Yeah.
Which is a common thing. It's the weirdest thing about comedy is that, well, there's absolute parallel thinking, especially because we all talk about current events
Yeah.
and subjects, and we oftentimes hit on the same jokes. But there's no recourse, or at least there wasn't for the longest time. Someone could just steal your whole act. Like if you were the Beatles and someone just stole your songs, they would sue you and you would have no money. And it would be that simple. I mean, it's happened with like Vanilla Ice with that Queen song, right? Remember?
Yeah.
Doom, doom,
Yeah.
doom, 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 doom. Under Pressure, and he changed it to Ice, Ice Baby. I think they took all his money. Like, that's how it works.
Did you ever hear the Ollie Joe Prater bit when the clubs first exploded in the 80s?
No, I wasn't familiar with Ollie Joe. I just heard about
He
him.
was a great stand-up, great guy. But he had an excellent ear for what worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so everybody was kind of jolly about it because he was such a likable guy.
Right.
And so they wrote this joke in the early to mid 80s that it's Sunday night at the club on the road, okay? And you're coming in for your next week, and Ollie Joe's there to finish his week, okay? And if Ollie Joe, if he buys you a beer, well, it means he did one of your jokes.
Oh, no.
And if he offers you a joint, it means he did one of your bits. If he offers you a line of cocaine, it means you just played Pittsburgh.
Well, it's unfortunate that those kind of people get intertwined in what's essentially, this is a very pretentious word to use, but the Comedy Store is kind of an artist colony.
Yes.
I mean, it's very pretentious
Very.
when we talk about stand-up comedy. But
Yeah.
basically, we're all creating comedy. We're all artists working together for the art of stand-up comedy. And every now and then, someone will get into that mix that's not doing that.
Yeah.
They're just stealing everybody else's stuff and then, bullying people and sicking their agents on you. Like, this is like weird predatory behavior.
Yeah.
That gets lumped into this. Like, there's a code amongst comedians,
Yeah.
and for the most part, everybody observes that code.
Absolutely.
And it's a great thing to be a part of, like the comedy community. And the worst thing that you could be, if you're a comedian, one of the worst things is you being cast out. Like, comics don't want to talk to you. That's got to be one of the worst things ever.
Right.
But if you steal from them, that's what happens.
And the label hangs on you forever.
If people know, if they know, and some people tolerate it, if you get them gigs, that does happen. Sometimes guys steal and they'll help their friends out and get them gigs afterwards. Like, look, I helped you guys. But everybody knows it's not the way to do it. This whole thing is a weird thing, right? You're trying to figure out what's funny. You're kind of trying to figure out what you think about certain things. And you're trying to figure it out in a way that is presentable on stage in front of a bunch of people that are drinking.
Well, this confrontation with Carlos Mencia happened in 2007. And to shift it a little bit, you and Red Band, he filmed it that night, and it kind of became a new internet way of doing things back then. It kind of exploded, didn't it?
Well, that was right around the time when there was those kind of videos were online.
Yeah.
Like, you could put little videos online. You could put things on, there was a bunch of different ways you could do it. And that was pretty recent, in 2007. Like, before that, I don't know when YouTube came around, but there was like a few little things that would
Yeah.
show videos and stuff, but it wasn't as easy.
Did it open
Yes,
your
it
eyes to the
was.
possibility of more internet exposure and what would lead to the Joe Rogan experience?
No, that's not how it got started. It really got started, the podcast got started from doing the Opie and Anthony show more than anything.
Really?
And because they would it was a hangout for those guys. they would just sit down and bring comics on, and it wouldn't feel like you were getting interviewed at all. It just felt like everybody's hanging out like friends.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is crazy that they're so loose that they could just let everybody hang out. You know, and what a great show it is to do. That's what got me to think about doing that.
Well, speaking of just hanging out and talking, I read that you eat what you kill.
Well, it'd be rude if you killed it and didn't eat it.
Yeah. Okay. Now I get it.
Yeah.
You're an avid hunter, bow and
I
arrow?
bow hunt, yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like this. I had made a decision somewhere around 2012 that I was either going to become a vegetarian or I was going to hunt. Because I watched too many of those PETA videos.
Yeah.
They got me.
Really?
Those fucking PETA videos, they'll get you. If you have any soul at all, you watch those videos, you're like, fuck. So I was like, I objectively, out of long-term analysis, personally don't think it's a good idea for me to not eat meat. I've tried it.
Yeah.
It didn't make me feel very good. And then when I went back to it, it was like I was refueling with like super energy.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think the ethical quandary aside, see, the ethical quandary is why vegetarianism and veganism is interesting. That's why it's interesting, because you're like, well, is it okay to kill things? I don't know. That's a real quandary. The question about what effect does that have on you as a human being if you inadvertently take part in factory farming, rather. If you're,
Well, I can
by
remember
using
feeling
your
terrible
money-
when I'd blow up a frog when I was a kid. I'd
That's
feel
different,
awful about it.
Argus. That's very different.
Well, I felt bad about killing an animal.
Right.
I'm trying to agree with you.
Right, but I'm talking about factory farming. I'm talking about factory farming.
Oh,
You
yeah,
ever
yeah,
watch those
yeah.
videos? Yeah, they're awful, right? Well, when you see like these torture videos of pigs and cows and stuff, I was like, okay. Like, if you see that and you know that is remotely possible and you're buying that food, you're taking part of that. So I was like, well, how do I get around that? I do one or two things. Well, I have to try hunting. I was like, I'll try it. And this guy, Steve Ranella, who's a good friend of mine, took me on a hunt. The first time I ever hunted was on a television show.
Really?
Yeah, first thing I ever shot in my life, I shot on TV.
Really?
Yeah, it was a big mule deer. Yeah, we went to we were in Montana.
You shot mule deer?
Yeah, we shot a mule deer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, did you eat it?
yeah, ate the shit
How
out
did
of
it taste?
Delicious. We ate a bunch of it on the fire in camp because we were there for an extra 2 days after I shot it.
Yeah. So what do you shoot around here to stay nourished with meat?
Well, around here, coyotes. You could eat a coyote if you had to.
Yeah, because you live in, you live in Bell Canyon, and there's got to be everywhere.
Coyotes are out here too, man.
Yeah. Wow.
I saw coyotes in Burbank. I mean, if you had to, you could eat them. I'm not saying you should eat them. But I mean, if you're saying, like, if the shit hits the fan, what are you going to eat? I'm going to eat the fuck out of a coyote.
Did you hear what they did to Paris Hilton about 10 years ago?
The coyotes?
Yeah.
Are they a gang?
Yeah.
What did they do?
She lived right above the Hyatt House, right next door to the Comedy Store here.
Oh.
And she had this gate that almost closed. So, and she also had about 19 or 20 dogs. So 3 coyotes came down from Mulholland Drive. Okay, 3 males. No,
Did she check their dicks?
3 males. Wait a minute, and a female.
Is she sure?
The female was.
Everybody's a fucking wildlife biologist.
The female was in heat. You got
Oh, she smelled it. As a girl, she knows.
This is what happened. So the male coyotes got the female coyote in heat to wave her tail around the front gate at Paris Hilton's house, and the dogs that could make it through the gate made it out, and they devoured her dogs, using the female as bait.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
So that's my coyote story.
I'm not surprised. They're creepy
They
little
also
fuckers.
go into doggy doors in Beverly Hills. I have people on my jog tell me all the time they
Oh.
guard the doggy door.
You imagine coming in your house and there's a fucking coyote in your kitchen? Yeah, they're creeps.
And when you're living in Beverly Hills, this isn't supposed to happen.
They really are creeps. I mean, it's a joke that they're creeps, but they're really creeps. They're wolves.
Yeah.
What a coyote is a wolf.
Yeah.
It's a That's the reason why you can have those coy wolves. That's kind of it's not real. They actually they've been breeding with each other for millennia. Like coyotes and wolves, it's a different kind of wolf.
Yeah.
Like they make viable offspring. That's how close they are. They're like dogs. Like that's how close they are. like wolves and coyotes are really close, except I think gray wolves, which is one of the problems when they brought wolves into Yellowstone Park in the 1990s.
Yeah,
they
that's right.
brought gray wolves from Canada, and they have been so far removed from the coyotes' genetics that they don't recognize them as breeding partners. They recognize them as enemies, and they kill them. So when gray wolves encounter coyotes, it makes the coyotes spread their territory out. They
Right.
run away from the wolves because the wolves will kill them and eat them.
Right.
But the wolves on the East Coast will fuck them.
Oh.
Eastern wolves will fuck the shit out of a coyote. So that's why they're moving east. They're everywhere though. They're the
It's a lot
only.
more pleasurable experience. I think.
They're actually. Well, I believe this is a fact. They're the only predator that's in all 50 states and has been spotted in every major city in the country. You got to realize, like, this is not something that took place 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You didn't see coyotes in New York City, but you
Right.
see them there now.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there's coyotes
That's right.
in New York City. They have them in Central Park. Fucking coyotes. Like, this is a wolf. Like,
Yeah.
we have wolves they're dog-eating, cat-eating cunts, and they're running through your neighborhood. And you're like, oh, it's nature. Bitch, this is not nature. This is Burbank. This ain't nature. It's not supposed to be nature. You don't want nature in Burbank. Stop. You got wolves living here, and they eat dogs. Get the fuck out of here. You people don't know what these things are. It's the world has changed in terms of, and people are like, oh, we're pushing into their territory, so this is their land too. Like, fuck you, team people, okay? Fuck you. We're not just pushing into their territory, they're eating our dogs, okay? This is not a one-way street. We've done something horrible to them. We've definitely pushed coyotes into new areas, but so have a bunch of other things, and they constantly expand their range anyway. Like, they expand their range and they change how they breed based on whether or not one of them dies.
Really?
Yeah, so when they do the ow, 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 they're doing roll call, okay? So they're communicating with each other. They're letting each other know sometimes that there's some sort of a kill, but they're also doing roll call. They want to check in on everybody.
You
And when
probably
one
hear a
them's
lot of that in
missing-
Bell Canyon, though, don't you?
Dude, you can hear it here. You can hear it right here. I've heard coyotes right here at the store.
I see them on my jog in the morning.
Dude, you can hear them.
I see them on my jog.
They're
in the
fucking everywhere. They're gonna eat you one day, dude.
No, they're not. No, they're
You
not.
carry a knife.
No,
you got a
I
piece?
have not with
You got
my
a piece?
personality. They go, "Oh, it's Argus." They leave me alone.
Man, they see you
No,
limping.
they not with my. They see my blue eyes. They know who's in charge.
Yeah.
Remember that.
It's very rare that they
This
eat
is England
people.
country.
It's rare that they eat people, but they did eat a girl once. She's a 19-year-old folk singer in Canada.
Good.
She got taken out by
I hate that. Someone singing "Lord Kumbaya."
she's a folk singer. I don't
Eat her.
think that's a folk singer.
Fuck, ban the bomb.
Wow. How rude. See, I think it's a 19-year-old kid. And he's like, no, it's the devil.
Folk singer, 19-year-old. She's just gonna be a communist.
Well, maybe
Eat her.
she was like a Sarah McLachlan type folk singer. You
I
know,
doubt it.
pretty songs, pretty folk. You doubt it? Oh, no.
The odds are against that. She'd be long-haired, angry at men. You know.
Wow. Damn. Marcus Hamilton laying it down.
So you only eat what you should. You like hunting. You're really a Renaissance man. You really are. You're interested in a lot of things.
I'm just like a professionally interested person.
Okay, now I want
That's
to
what I
get.
am.
I want to
I'm
get
professionally
in.
interested in
I want to
things.
get into your mind and how you expand it because, like, you famously smoked pot with Elon Musk, which was hilarious because it tanked the stock for Tesla the next day. Now, I just wondered, did you sell short before that interview?
I don't know any of that stuff. Yeah, that just seemed like a natural thing to do.
Yeah, a guy's going to Mars. You say, let's light up.
We're drinking whiskey. We're already drinking. We've been talking for like 2 hours, and I'm gonna light this blunt. Fuck it. I wanted to light it. And I like him, so I'm like, I want to, get him high.
Yeah.
But I was surprised that he didn't just know how to smoke weed. That he wouldn't just dive into it. I thought he probably smoked weed a lot.
Yeah.
Like
But
if
you-
you would hear, but he took a hit. He hung in. He's like, no, nothing. I think he's probably too smart for pot. Probably doesn't work. You know what I mean? He probably just doesn't get past all the thoughts.
Well, he's got enough. He's Elon Musk, you know.
Dude, I don't understand people like that. When I talk to him, I'm very appreciative of him. But when I talk to him, I always feel like I'm something different. Like I'm some chimp.
Yeah.
You know, like he's the guy driving the car, and I'm the chimp going, "What the fuck is this?" Like I can hardly believe.
That's funny.
I can hardly believe that he and I are the same thing. Like I've never invented a goddamn thing, and I'm not gonna. But this guy can't stop inventing shit.
Yeah.
His brain is just flooded with ideas.
Do you believe he'll go to Mars like he says he will?
Well, unless he runs out of money, that's the only
Yeah.
thing that would stop him from going to Mars. It seems like it would be expensive as fuck to go to Mars.
Well,
Right?
now, before,
Try to guess.
this brings up something else.
Maybe not. Maybe it's cheap. Super easy, bro. What does it bring up? Did you prepare these?
No, you had me thinking about Mars, and it had me thinking about a complaint. We just landed on Mars, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. That was great news. And then again,
No one in this room is responsible. I don't think we just.
it brought up a personal resentment. I get to react to the
A
damn
personal
landing.
resentment? What is a personal resentment?
Well, that we can send a rocket 240 million miles, land on Mars, and it send back pictures.
Right.
But we can't invent a voting machine that works in Florida.
Oh, Arya.
Caught me doing a joke, didn't you? No,
Good point, though.
now here's what I want to know. You used to be against pot, and now you smoke pot. How'd that change?
Well, I was never against pot. I just thought it made you a loser. I wasn't against it. Like I was all for you.
That was
doing
before
it.
your first 10 million.
Well, I wasn't interested in people like that were lazy. And I had associated negatively in my mind, incorrectly, I'd associated marijuana with laziness.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
What turned that switch?
my friend Eddie Bravo, who's a famous jiu-jitsu champion and is one of the best jiu-jitsu instructors in the world, he and I used to do jiu-jitsu together. And he was just a really interesting guy and interested in a lot of the shit that I'm interested in. And he was talking to me how he gets high all the time. I was like, what? And I was like, doesn't it make you stupid? Like, that was literally what I thought at 30 years old. Like, I thought it makes you dumb. He's like, dude, it does not make you dumb. It makes you more creative. He goes, I come up with jiu-jitsu moves when I'm high. I was like, what?
You think it would slow you down?
What? No, doing jiu-jitsu high is one of the great pleasures in life.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of jiu-jitsu players get high. In fact, there's an actual show called High Rollers that's dedicated to this, where these world-class black belts smoke weed on camera and then choke each other. Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow.
We got to wrap this bitch up. Argus, I got a show. I'm doing a
Listen.
show in the main room right now.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
My
And,
pleasure, my friend. I
love you, man.
always love you and respect you, and it's great having you around, man. I appreciate
thanks,
it very
thanks
much.
for being here. I really appreciate it.
My
Joe
pleasure.
Rogan, ladies and gentlemen. He's got to go up there.
Argus Hamilton, folks.